G'day and welcome to another awesome video tutorial. I'm Brinley from Ozhammer, and this tutorial I'm going to be taking you through how to do some really awesome work on an Imperial Fist Primaris Aggressor Marine. Man, you want to know how to do sweet checkers? This is definitely the video for you. You want to do cool transfers? Video for you. Thick weathering? Video for you. Yellow? Nah, I'm kidding. It's in there somewhere. Definitely the video for you. This is probably the longest video I've done before. I do apologize at some point. I was really sick, and so I sound like I was just going like the entire time, and I apologize for those parts. But I hope you enjoy. Definitely leave your feedback to what you think, and let's crack on into it. Alrighty, so as you can see, we've got our nice Primaris miniature all primed up in yellow. So as I explained, we've already primed it before. So the next step that we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing the black on. So we're just going to be cutting the black, which is pretty easy. We just use a watered down Abaddon black, and we just cut into certain areas. So we're going to be cutting into the belt feed, the weapons, the shoulder pads, the chest plate, probably a couple of nooks and crannies, and maybe some other areas, maybe around these vents, probably around the back as well, belt feeds for sure, just to make it look really, just to make it stand out. So how we're going to do this is that we have to do this in a couple of layers. And so I just want to show you guys how I do the thickness and the consistency of the black. So here we have my very fancy and very up-to-date wet palette. So all it is a Tupperware lid, kitchen cloth, basically is just a sham whale, and then some not baking paper, it is parchment paper, which is really handy because it holds the paint on one side and doesn't go through all the way through, and just keeps a good consistency. You've got a very wet palette, which is why it's called a wet palette. It's weird. So all I'm doing is that I'm just going to grab a little bit of black paint out of my Abaddon black. You don't need heaps. Actually, you probably need a little bit more because we've got a fair bit of area to cover. So you want a decent sized dollop. You want a decent sized dollop on your brush. Close your pot so it doesn't go anywhere. Just going to pop it down here, and then get some water. I usually use one of these Nurofen syringes just to insert the water at the top. You can just control, very good control. You can do it with a brush, or if you want, make sure it's flat so it doesn't run too much, and then you just want to mix it in. Now you want this to have like a really, it's not an ink like, it wants to be, you want to be very thin consistency, because you want to be able to apply it quite liberally to the model, but so that it's thin enough so it doesn't obscure any details, but thick enough so you're not sitting there applying 8 or 9 different layers. It becomes very time consuming. I made that mistake. Oh man, I've got to stop knocking that camera. Alright, so got our paint, it's good to go. Got our miniature, good to go. And so all we're going to do, I mean, we're really loading up the brush at the moment, but we've got a lot of area to cover, so we're just going to be very liberal, and we're just going to start painting. So an important thing to remember is that to be drawing it across. So even with this consistency, that's probably still a little bit thinner than I would actually like to have it, but we'll make do with it, and we'll make sure we apply it into. Alright, so we fixed up our brush issue, and we're actually just ready to start painting again. So what we're going to do, the current layer is just a little bit too thin. As you can see, you can still see a fair bit of yellow shining through. It's not obscuring any detail, so it's not too thick, but it's still too thin. So we're going to add a little bit more paint. But we're just going to have another contrast at the other side, and we're just going to see how we're going to go. So just going to start layering on. See, it's still quite thin, but I guess that's what we're going to have to deal with. A bit of extra paint kind of thickened it up a little bit, but it's not, hasn't seemed to really helped too much. As you can see, we're just going to smash it around and try and just get it on as much as possible. I think we're just going to have to deal with the fact that it's going to be like a little bit of a thin layer, and the next layer is just going to have to be a little bit better. So just be careful when you're running your brush along these edges, is that you're gonna, when your paint's really thin, it's going to flick. That's not something you actually want, because it makes it pretty annoying. Something else that you have to go back and fix. So we're just gonna come to here. We're just gonna grab our layers. And we're just gonna build it up nice and slowly. Probably gonna skip through most of this because it's gonna be pretty boring. So as you can see, we've got like a little bit that's just hiding just in here, and so we're just gonna try and thread the brush through. And just tap it out a little bit. So as you can see, I've accidentally hit my miniature with a bit of overspray on it, which isn't a huge deal because that means that's where we're going to be weathering. So these miniatures are quite weather heavy, so any mistake that I make with the black or any other colors becomes part of the areas that I'm going to be weathering on my miniature. So I'm just going to try and remove the majority of the black. Not a huge deal. A little bit here and there. It'll get covered up with the weathering. We don't have to worry about too much. Alright, so as you can see, we've cut in our black and it's got a pretty even consistency over it. It's got enough to do what we want for the moment. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying the transfer to this shoulder here, which should be heaps of fun. So what we need a moisture pad to separate the transfer. We need a bit of water, which we're going to dump into it now. You just want to soak the transfer pad through completely. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. There's a couple of different schools of thought, I guess, that are out there as to how you want to do it. Personally, getting a good old sponge going is probably my favorite way, or the easiest way in my opinion to do it. You're able to get the transfer to lift off. So the idea is, yeah, you just want to lift the transfer off. That's what we're going to do. Alright, so the reason we're putting this down now and not later is because we want to do weathering on this model. There's a whole pile of weathering all over. That shoulder pad there, we'll just cut that light, we don't really need it at the moment. So we're just going to make a lot of noise in the background. Rather sharp knife. Okay, so the problem with these is that because we're applying a round, flat transfer to a curved surface, we have to cut lines into this. Alright, so pop this on. What we're going to do is that obviously we're just going to use one, so we'll pop this bad boy out of the road. What we're going to do is that we're going to cut lines into this. Now for people who are doing really clean models and applying transfers, that's going to be an issue because you're going to have marks on your transfer. For me it's not so bad, I just cover it up with weathering. It's pretty lazy, but that's how we'll be doing it. So I'm going to cut into it. We'll show what you're doing. Right, so you want to separate the two, make sure your fingers are dry. So there we go, separate the two, blah blah blah. No, probably just run it through again. Could be a little bit firmer, there we go, she's through now. No big deal. And then grab this transfer, we're going to have a look at it, and we're just going to put some little incisions just around the side. Let's start in the middle. You just want to cut through. This will just make it a little bit easier for the miniature to fold onto the surface. And then we're just going to do another one over here. You want to kind of cut a wedge so it'll fold into itself. So you're trying to find the circle. Just want to give it a tiny bit of a clean. It doesn't matter if you chip it too much. I'm not personally of the mind of worrying about it, simply because I don't need to worry about it. And then all you want to do is that you want to get your brush, load it up with a bit of water, and you just want to dab at it. You're just going to be dabbing at it until this bad boy moves, either as a whole or by itself. You just keep dumping that water on until the transfer lifts off, and you'll see it when it happens. You'll start to shift around and it'll actually look pretty easy. So at this point I like to prep the miniature. Just get a wet paintbrush. Just apply a thin layer of water to the area you're going to be doing. It allows you to move it around, especially for if you're doing a commission job. You don't want to get it off center or make it look a little bit weird. And so as you can see, I'm just gonna wait for it to move, and there we go, we've got the first part to come off, which is great. Probably not what we wanted, but we've got the rest of this that's going to start to come off. Now I apologize for when it starts to come off camera. It's just, you gotta work somewhat quickly with your transfers to get them on there. So here's pretty easy. As you can see, you just want to get it on. I like to use that center bit down the bottom to try and line it up to make it pretty as even as possible, to be honest. And then look, there we go. Just smear it down a little bit. We're going to be using a medium to cut into this to make it to work, and it's okay, you can just pick it up if you need to, and you can move it around because there's still a fair bit of water underneath this. You can still manipulate it quite a bit. As you can see, we're still not quite completely on center. We're definitely getting there. Alright, so the water started to dry, which is pretty good. So what we're going to do, we're just going to hit it with a bit of lime and medium, which is just going to help break that compound down a little bit more. So basically you just crack your pot as usual. Get your brush in it. You can wash this off in water, it's no big deal. Get a fair amount on there. And just smash it down. This will help break down the transfer a little bit more and allow it to adhere a bit better. So as you can see, it's already starting to pull away at it. Which is not what we want, but it works pretty quickly, so you've got to work fast. Just want to push this a little bit just back up, back into the circle. If we can't make it happen, there we go, that's fine. That's close enough, to be honest. We're good to go there. I'll just let that dry. As you can see, it's starting to fold down a little bit better and starting to work a little bit nicer for itself. And then it'll start to soften, and any luck that'll just break away at the top there. Either way, it's not a big deal. We'll just let it do its thing, and then we'll just keep playing with it. Alright, so as you can see, the lime and medium has made the transfer flatten out quite nicely. It's got a bit of a shine to it, unfortunately. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to use a bit of Army Painter anti-shine. So it's just a matte varnish. We're just going to coat the whole thing, and the whole thing is just going to go a nice some colour. So I'm actually just going to drop it straight onto it, and I'm just going to use that with a brush, and we're just going to spread it over
the whole thing. Might just use a little bit more. There we go, 'cause we've got a big bubble in it. There we go. Look at that. All over it. And that'll take the shine right out of it, which is what we want. We'll just pull away some of that excess. There we go, that's pretty good. Right, now we're just going to leave that to dry. We'll go from there.
Alright, so the medium that we used, the anti-shine, the matte varnish, has finally dried. And as you can see, it's actually looking quite good. Right, so you can see here that there's no longer a shine to the decal. I'll just pass the light so you guys can notice the difference between it's a little bit more matte looking, especially on that side. Now it's good it still retained its cracks, it still retains its edges. That's exactly what it's want. It's not going to be an issue for painting because we've already sealed it in behind our art coat. So we've got art coat, and then we've got the gloss medium, we've got the Lahayim under all that. So we're doing quite well. Alright, so the next step is, before we even start weathering, we're not quite up to weathering yet, what we want to do is that we want to do any extra details. So for this fella we're going to do some checkers, because that's a feature I do quite a fair bit on a lot of my models. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do checkers. It should be pretty fun. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to start with the consistency of the black paint you want. So we're going to it's on a yellow, bright background. We want to cut into it with a yellow. We want to cut into it with a black. And so the way we're going to do that is that I'm just going to show you what consistency we're going to use, and we're going to be using a really tiny brush to do it. So, okay, not with that one. We're going to be drawing with that one. This is the one we're going to be pulling the paint out with. Good old trusty Bad and Black. Good old random brush out of nowhere. Right, and we're just gonna pop it onto here. So it's probably a little bit easier to see the consistency that we're after on a wet palette, my good old cheapo wet palette. We'll just grab our waters. I'll just drop them down here. So just get off. So that's probably clean water. We can probably do that. I just want to dump a couple of drops on the table. I bump that. And so we'll face it this way so you guys can see the consistency we're sort of after. We'll actually start to see it run pretty quickly after we get the water mixed into it. Now you see how it's starting to already pool on the edges? That's exactly what we want. We want a really, really thin consistency for this work, because it's going to be really, really thin line work to start with. And then we'll get it a little bit thicker, and then we'll start using actual grey to block in the white, because black and white checkers, it's going to look pretty cool. Alright, so here's a fellow. Where are we going to put the checkers? Usually gauntlets are a pretty cool place. We're going to have that on that side, so we could probably check up the gauntlet here, and we could probably check up a kneecap or something. I think that'd be pretty good. That'd probably that'd probably pull the eyes from here to here to here, and I think that'll look pretty good, right? So we can do the hand. So it's gonna be pretty challenging. A lot of curved surface here, but we're just gonna run with it. We're just gonna see how we go. So this should be pretty exciting. We'll just get a bit of moisture onto the brush. I just want to pull a little bit off there. I just want to draw it until we've got like the consistency we want. Yeah, that's pretty good. We're just gonna be cutting into it nice and gently. Oh goodness, this is gonna be awkward. I don't think I've ever done this with a camera here. So, alright, so when you're drawing lines, the best way to remember is that going down's the most natural for people. So just gonna give it a go. So there's a big gauntlet thing here. Just gonna try and cut that off as much as we can. We're doing a line right here, and the thicker your lines, checkers are usually pretty square, so we're going to try and match the sizing going the other way. So we'll give our brush a wash. going to be our checker pattern. So sweet, we've got that one done there, and we're going to do this knee down here. So knees are a little bit easier. It's got a line, we can follow it. We can even quarter it, make it even easier. Maybe we'll do quartering. Quartering on a knee. I don't know. Alright, so here we go. We're going to do a bit of quartering just down here. Make it look pretty snazzy. Nice and easy. Remember, going down is the easiest way to do it. Don't worry too much if you fudge it. You'll be blocking these lines out a little bit anyway. So for my apologies. For this one, cut kind of here. Look at where the other one is. And just be like, yep, that's good. Go from there. There you go. Now we'll quarter that one. Checkers, quarter, and a flash. We're just going to block it in pretty good. What I mean by blocking in is that we're just going to fill in the black. So grab this fella, be like, alright, so I want black here. Let's go bloop, bloop. Nice and easy. In. Here's a cat, other cat. Now with the other side, do the exact same. Nice and easy. Look at that, magic. It's gonna look better, don't worry. Right, so from here, right, so here we're gonna be like, alright, we need to work out which ones we're gonna block in. So I usually just pick a side. There's gonna be white, there's gonna be black. White usually shows up a lot more. So we'll here we'll go here. We'll start here. So I delayed a little bit because I was just trying to plan out that the colors were going to go in my head. Because this front area, this will be mostly shaded in with weathering. So you try and pick ones in positioning that'll help stand out. There should be a little bit of paint on there. Oh, come back. I just want to block it in. Nice and easy. Just going to fast forward through this until we get to the next card because it's super boring. Alright, so we got our colour. Cut in pretty good. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick our next grey. Booth around? No. Give me the other one. Here you go, Celestia Grey. This grey is pretty much good to go. And a little bit of it. Same sort of thing, same sort of deal. Same sort of consistency. Just need a little bit of it. Need a wet palette. This will help us block in the extra colours. So come down here. Oh, my apologies. Gotta get used to where this camera's pointing. Come to here, and then we use the white. Basically cut in those lines where the black is, and we use both colours to do the same thing to each other. To cut those lines in to make them look nice and crisp and neat. But then, like I said, we're going to weather this up a fair bit. So just make sure that joins there. You always cut into that, that's not actually a big deal. Remembering these squares are being laid up as well. So we're actually going to be able to colour this in a little bit deeper. It's going to look super messy to start with, but that's okay because that's how it works. But the thing is, you can spend ages being absolutely perfect with your line work, and like a little something's just going to set you off. Or, sorry, you guys can do it this way, and it'll look pretty good, especially with a bit of weathering on it. Do a little bit under here, because I just know somebody's going to ask about, there's one under this barrel. Otherwise it looks pretty good. And then that stuff on the front is going to be all metal. So we got to remember that. Probably should have done that first. Probably should do that black. I should probably paint that black now. It's okay. So you just go back over, find the ones, try it up a little bit, come back through, patch them back up. A little bit of love. No biggie. Just get a nice base for that white to come on, so you don't have too much yellow shining through. It should look smick. And if you can get them right now, then you won't have to worry about it when you come back to try and redo them after you put the next layer of black on. It's pretty good. Just gonna tidy up around that gauntlet. I've been a bit lazy. Did drill the barrels. Feeling pretty happy about that. Alright, so now we use the black to cut back into it. So you should only have to cut back in the black one more time after this, and after you do the white. That's just going to be to clear out some edges. So here, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to find the boxes just with the tip. I'm just going to cut in straight line. So again, you don't want your paint too thick. Thin coats. Nice, even, thin coats. You can always layer it up. Always layer it up. And here we're just going to pull that line back out and across. This one in the corner is a little tricky one. It's going to go nice and slow. Try to cut into it too much. There we go. It's looking alright. Nice and checkered like. This one, same thing. Oh, it's fast. It's on the underside. She'll be right. Back to here. Use a black. There's a bug on this. Get out of here, bug. My apologies. Again. There we go. There it is right there. not looking too bad. It's going to get weathered up quite a fair bit, so we'll just endure that. For now, but that gauntlet's looking pretty good. We'll throw some white into it. We'll cut it down just a little bit more, and then we'll start the weathering. Alright, so the white, next part, you may have guessed, Lutheran grey, great colour, so we're going to throw that on. Same purpose. You drop her in. I mean, you can transition up if you really wanted, but I've never really been too worried. I probably won't go to Scar White. I may. Feeling, I guess. So again, just use your wet palette to get the consistency. Just want to kind of just dump it on. Don't really worry about adding too much water to it. You want it kind of thick. Oh goodness, nearly lost you. And then you're just using that to nice. I'm gonna get like a sort of. So it's going to go a little bit powdery. Now I say that like the pigmentation is going to separate. It's going to be really obvious because I don't know. It just seems to be the way this one's working, and because I'm not going to apply really thin coats, but that's okay. Because you'll see when we weather this, this is going to look. Going to give it more of a chipped paint feel to it, and we'll definitely. Go back over it to make it look really chipped. So see how we're just going pretty solid. We're just being cautious. We're not going all the way into it, to the squares. We're just kind of like keeping to the outsides. We don't want to encroach on the lines too much. Nice and easy. That's looking alright. She's looking a bit skewed. We'll might get the black out, and we'll just fix up some of those lines. Alrighty, welcome to basically weathering finally. So we've got our Primaris Aggressor. He's all yellowed up with a couple of different techniques. So it's just a zenithal yellow highlight, starting with Avalon yellow and then working our way up to Sunburst yellow. No, Uriel yellow, my apologies. And then we've cut into the black, as you can see in previous segments. And then we've applied the transfer, and we've slapped on some checkers and a little tri-bit just down there. Doing pretty good. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be doing our weathering on this miniature. It's going to be pretty exciting. So what we're going to need, you need so basically like some thick kitchen paper. So this is going to be for dry brushing. We're going to be using a couple of different techniques to get this across. You're going to need, so I personally prefer Mornfang brown, Rhinox hide. That's probably the closest to scorch brown that I've used. Lead belcher, and then you need some Ushabati bone. It's pretty good. Now I've got a couple of specialist brushes that I've deliberately destroyed to do this job a little bit easier. So we've got a large, got a large dry brush. I've got two smaller ones that I use for dry brushing. As you can see, the bristles are quite distressed, so we're going to be using that in the near future. How it's going. So what we're going to do is that I like to examine the model first and be like, where have I accidentally stuck black? So we've got some black accidentally down around here, down around the shoes, up here, up on the side, height. And basically my mistakes determine where I'm going to be doing the weathering, so I can hide it. And then naturally on the gloves, up here, and then on this bad boy as well. We're actually going to make that look pretty cool and weathered, because otherwise it looks terrible on the back of this. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to grab a bit of Rhinox hide. Probably give it a bit of a shake. Popper. So there's going to be a base. There's going to be a base for the layering, for the damage. So I'm going to pop a little bit here, and we're going to transfer a bit onto this brush over here, and we're going to work it through like a dry brush. So for those of you who haven't dry brushed before, here's how we're going to do it. So you get this, and you really just want to work it in, but you really want to like work it into the brush so it gets nice and in there. And you just want to get a little bit of the pigment off, so when you start dry brushing it on, you'll start picking it up. And so we want to pick these areas where we've spilled a fair bit of black, and it's gonna put brown on there. A little bit on the lower part of our checkering. So what we're going to do here, we're just going to lightly drag it across and pull it up so it looks like it's been smashed up a little bit. We're just going to start working on this checker here on the glove, and I'm going to weather it pretty heavily, and the fingers along with it. They're going to be pretty distressed by the time I finish, so I like to kind of just practice on the finger areas and be like, alright, yeah, sweet. They're looking pretty distressed, and then slowly work my way up onto this gauntlet here. And you want it to be quite distressed, and that'll look quite good. And we really need to weather this area up. Here's pretty much the big one, so obviously being a square white circle, any mistakes come up pretty quickly, so we're going to hide that under scratching and damage marks. I'm just going to pull it down until looks like it's just a smudge. You can't actually tell that there's a gigantic gap between the transfer there, so weather that one up there. That looks like a scratch mark or something. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with this. And then we've got that big gap in the middle there. Just gonna might just, yeah, I'm gonna cover it up. I'll just get a bit of brown on it. Makes it look like it's taking a pretty good center shot at it, and then down here this is pretty bad as well. Just rough this up down here. And it looks pretty good, and we'll continue adding weathering along it with the deeper browns and the deeper colors, and you just, with the brown you can just drag it onto the white, and then it'll naturally look like it's quite pitted or faded, or it's picked up nicks and scratches, and so it's actually, that's not looking too bad at all. So it's a sort of effect. We'll just kill this one, see if you guys, there we go, it's a little bit better. See that? So look at all this snazzy weathering that we've done on here. Can you see that one? There we go, that's a little bit better. Because we want our silvers to look kind of crisp and kind of fresh, we're going to go through the weathering. So we're going to add basically a small amount of inks, homemade ink. So this is just Mournfang brown. It's a wonderful ratio with water, and so give it a good shake. It has to be really, really, really thin for this to work properly, otherwise it's going to look rubbish. And then this is just going to be literally a dollop just there. That's it. That's all you want. For the wasted paint, we can probably just drop that over here. And then I like to use the old Nurofen syringe to help control the quantity of water that I'm popping onto this. So this can go 1, 2, so 2 pretty big drops, and then we're just going to mix it in until it's a really, really thin consistency, so it's like quite transparent. So try not to get it, I mean it's going to get all over him anyway, so as you can see it's quite very, very, very liquidy. And that's what we want. That's what we want. We want a very, very liquid sort of consistency. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to grab this and put this bad boy upside down, and we're just going to dump it in there. And then for the shoulder guards, because it's going to be like a slightly thicker, when you want like a thicker mud sort of build up, you're going to use a little bit more, and it's basically a 1:2 ratio of brine oxide and water. So as you can see, I'm just going to mix it in. It's a little bit thicker. That's a little bit thicker. And this we're actually going to drop in around these shoulder pads. So we'll probably pull this up a little bit. I'll bring this down so you guys can see, and we'll just drop this into here, and we'll make it actually quite thick, and that'll hide the overlining of the black. And then we can double up the thickness again to give it like a real sort of muddy appeal to it. And we'll just get this up a little bit on the guard and on the crest. And then like to cut back on the black, we just go the black again, and then any mistakes won't look as Alright, so as you can see, everything's starting to dry up nicely, and we can start throwing our next part of it down. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the same brush we use for dry brushing,
the browner, we're going to be using it to dry brush our lead belcher on to give that real nice chipped metal undercoat look to it. So give her a quick shake. It's really bright. Might just try a different light while we're here. That's more yellow. That's pretty good. A little bit darker, but it's not too bad. So usually we're gonna get a big old glob of. No, we don't really have enough light on here, unfortunately. I'll have to keep that there. We can see what's going on. I'm just gonna smash it in here. Get a nice little bit of collection going. We'll leave the bottom for the moment, and the areas I want to focus on is going to be along these ridge lines here on the belt feeds. At the top, you just want to pick out areas that you would think would naturally get banged around a bit. So like feed loaders, gears. A lot of the areas that are black, you want to really drop a little bit of silver on. Just makes it look, we're not going for a golden demon here, but it just makes it look a little bit nice and a little bit worn. So obviously the barrels are going to be full silver, so you just work your way around that. Drag onto this hand. I like to work back at the fingers. Makes it a little bit easier to see where the paint's dropping. Sometimes you just want to go back and forward once or twice to see a bit of an even drop or a different drop in these areas, and see that mag load is going to be pretty well used. You just want to pull it back. You don't want to go too crazy, but you definitely want to get a fair bit of metal. Alrighty, so as you can see, the finished product. You can see we've done a little bit of red around the cording, and a bit of silver on the box, and a little bit of bone on the bone, obvious, and dirtied it up, make it look real good. Threw in the eyes are nice and blue, and threw them on a custom base that is made out of cork and tiny little bits of plastic tubing, and some of that tufted grass, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is the finished product. Thanks heaps for watching. If you guys want to see any more techniques, I'll be breaking this up as we go throughout the rest of it. Anyway, thanks for watching. It was a blast. Check out the other videos.